and welcome back to Dave and Ryan Review. Um, Thanks for tuning in. This week we're going to be looking back, reviewing, mulling over um, one of my favorite TV shows, um, Smallville. But before we get to that, how you doing, Dave?
Yeah, I'm all right. I've got a few things to say, to be honest, before into it. Just
Yeah, yeah. What?
I love Smallville. I've got a very. Are we still on? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry, you just flashed off for a second. So I was just checking. Um, yeah. So I've got a bit of an addictive personality, and with Smallville, I absolutely loved it when it came out. Bought the DVDs. You know, thought about it, talked about it a lot, but I know no one loves this more than you do, and you are like for me like the Smallville connoisseur, as it were. And I know that by the end of this review, I would have learned something that I didn't know about this show, and you were always my go-to. So, and I wouldn't have watched this if it wasn't for you and Jack.
Mm.
So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
No, no. I mean, you're right. This is a completely biased review. Um, there's not going to be any objectivity from me whatsoever. Now there will be, obviously, but no, it is very, very much one of my favorite shows. It was a show actually my one of my mates got me into, and we used to watch it together. And then I think yeah, Jack started watching it, and then you started watching it. But no, it is for me. I mean, where do you even begin? I think the there's just so many things about it that were kind of like groundbreaking at the time. Obviously, let's get out of the way first. The special effects, obviously, some of them do not hold up today, 20 years
Some
later.
do.
Some do, some don't. But 20 years later, what I would say is that these were TV show effects. These were had never been done on a TV show before to this kind of level, and
Mm.
and it was and it really kicked off. You think this started in 2001, and you know nothing like this kind of thing had really been seen on telly to this sort of scale and scope and stuff. Obviously, we'd had New Adventures of Superman and things like this, but it was a very different kind of show. Um, it was a very different feel to the show. Obviously, it's the early years of Clark Kent and stuff. So this was quite a groundbreaking thing, and it really kicked off one of the things that kicked off the whole superhero thing that obviously turned into the MCU, the DCEU, and all that kind of stuff. This was the precursor to those. It was like this. I think I was listening to something the other day. It was this and um, uh, Spider-Man. I think came out 6 to 8 months after this, and those two things were like, well, people were really hyped on all of this stuff. So yeah, like I think it had its ups and downs. There are some absolutely horrific episodes, but there's over 200 episodes. You're not going to hit it out of the park every single one. But I think overall, there's so much good to come out of it that yeah, I'm always pleased to rewatch it as I have done in the last 6 months. I think we finished our latest rewatch of Smallville. Um, but yeah, where do you want to start? Like, how do you want to start? How do you want to get into this? Because there's so much of
Um,
it. Obviously, we're not going to go, bit by bit, but maybe.
I'm kind of happy to go with the foundational points. So so looking at that, I started rewatching it sort of this week. I realised it was on Amazon or Prime Video, and just been catching up with episodes, season one, season two. Had a little look at further on as well,
Mm,
but yeah, for the Clark Kent, Tom Welling, and Michael, is it Rosenbaum?
Yep.
These two guys, seeing both of their origins side by side, is just fantastic. There, you couldn't get a better casted, Superman, Clark and Lex, and I love that. That's what kept me invested. Season 1 and 2, and obviously there's amazing side characters as well, like so many. But those two in particular, their sort of friendship, knowing how they end up in like movies and things, years to come. But seeing them, you really want them to be friends early on, and you just
I
know that's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because obviously you know they're destined not to be, but it would, because both of them are so good and their relationship was so well done, that it's still sad when it doesn't, when
Definitely.
it deteriorates, because it's not like, oh well, I already knew, because we all know that's going to happen, but it's still, for me, I still like, oh man, maybe if Clark had just, maybe if he had, maybe if Lex had just, you want them to, um you want them to be friends because they've got such a good relationship on the show,
Mm.
and even today they seem to be good buddies. They do a Smallville rewatch podcast weekly.
Ah,
So at the
there you
moment
go.
they're in
See,
they're in
you've
season
already
two.
taught you've already taught me something.
So yeah, every week, and I watch it. I think, and I'll listen to it, and they talk about the show. They talk about each episode, and they go through it. They have guests on it and stuff, and
Ah,
it's really fun. So if you are a Smallville fan, that is it's called Talkville. It's it's uh it's 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 nice to see that these people obviously work together, that they still enjoy each other's time, and that the relationship we saw on screen obviously had some real world components to it as
that's
well.
cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
I'll
So
definitely give that a watch. Talk,
no,
Phil. Yeah.
yeah. And I definitely agree in terms of their, and I think I was thinking about this before we got to it. What for me, and I think this extends to a lot of the other characters, that Superman, that these characters need more time to really you want to know them more. Like Lex, usually, I love Gene Hackman as Lex in the original Superman, and I enjoyed other versions of Lex, like the guy in New Adventures
Kevin.
of Superman and Kevin Spacey, and great. But actually, Michael Roseman is the best one.
Yeah.
Um, he is the best because we spent so much. We saw his descent into this thing and his motivations, and it's excellent. And the same for me. It goes for I think two of my favorite characters, Jonathan and Martha Kent, in the
Yeah.
show. You know, in other films, in the films mostly, they're kind not throwaway, but they're not. I don't. You could never get the feeling for them that for me, this is the quintessential Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent. This is
The
what
only,
you have to.
the only
This is what you have
two,
to aim for every
the only
time.
two, the only two you could argue come in second is probably the New Adventures of Superman,
Yeah,
the older versions.
true.
Um,
Maybe.
but even that was more for comedy.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
they were.
I didn't feel like when Jonathan Kent dies in Smallville. Spoiler. Um, I cried
Mm,
when that happened, and
it was quite shocking, wasn't it?
it
Because
was
they,
quite shocking. Um, and because you'd spent all this time, you saw, that this guy loved his family so much, and that they loved him, and that now he was dying. But it was, I mean, just so emotional
yeah,
um, at the time. And yeah, he's one of the best. People say, "Oh, best TV dads." He's there. He's one of the best TV dads going. He was. It was just, and I think again, some of my problems with some of the newer Superman stuff, anything, is they don't get the feeling right for the most part. They don't get that, and it's hard to even put that into words. I think Smallville has it in buckets.
Yeah,
Um, and the family dynamic really works.
and it's
And
simple, isn't it? It's simple,
yeah,
but it's just these guys are going to give their life for Clark, and they've got a little team, haven't they? It's
uh,
like whatever problems you've got,
we're gonna
we can
work
work
out.
it out. We can work it out together.
Yeah,
Don't worry. Your eyes are set in the flipping classroom light, but we'll work it out. And they get him focusing on the scarecrow,
mm,
um, stuff like that, and it makes for a fun family dynamic where Clark feels safe to
yeah,
practice his powers, and that he's got someone to talk to about it as well.
absolutely. And that's kind of that sort of first 4 seasons is kind of that. It's
Mm,
very that family dynamic. It's them together. We get some really cool cameos. We get some really good like mythology kind of stuff with Superman. Christopher Reeve is in season 2, amazing. That the
yeah,
first that's also the first time we hear the Superman theme in the show, amazing. We see, let's not forget Lionel Luthor, a great bad guy.
yeah.
Um,
I
let's
was
not
going to say,
Chloe,
with yeah,
Chloe, a great sidekick. Pete, a great sidekick. Lana, I think was good at the beginning. For me, I didn't appreciate her much going forward past season 4, but that's just a personal taste thing for me.
honestly, I couldn't agree more, and I think she's excellent in sort of at season 1 and 2, and you really want her
Mm,
and Clark to get together, and they really
yeah,
they do it to death, don't they? The
yeah,
whole
yeah, yeah.
they can't be together thing, but
I mean, even because I think you mentioned you hadn't seen season 8, even the way she goes out of the show, you know, because at that point, basically season 8 is like a kind of like a reboot of the show in some respects. It's now focused more on Lois and Clark, um, and she comes back for a bit, and basically what we'd seen is that Clark was beginning to want to be in a relationship with Lois, or that relationship was building. They put a handbrake on that. Lana comes back. Clark can't just say, you know what, actually, I don't really want to be in this relationship anymore with Lana. So basically, they turn Lana into like a superhero, but her superpower, she can absorb kryptonite. So she absorbs so much kryptonite, they literally can't be together. She's literally toxic for him, physically toxic. And it's like they couldn't even give him the 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 cojones to just say, you know what, I'm done. Lana, I love you, but this doesn't work anymore. Like we should
yeah,
move on. It was like no, she has to physically not be able to be near him for him to move on.
that's
And
a
that
bit
was a
silly. Isn't
big bugbear. It's very silly. I don't know why they did it that way, um, but it puts a dampener on that season. It actually derails that season, that whole little
it?
period. It really does. If you watch it, the bits before Lana get there are some of the best we'd had in a while in that show, and then after that, it gets a little bit muddled for the rest of the season. Um, but the Lois and Clark stuff is brilliant at all
Yeah,
times. It's brilliant. Their dynamic, we're skipping over, but this version of Lois is right up there for me as one of the best. Definitely at least in the running with Margot Kidder for Lois, I think,
yeah.
um, for that sort of quintessential Lois, because the dynamic she has with Tom Welling is great, and you could just watch that all day. Um, and
What?
yeah,
Why don't we leave the very last scene for the end of the review and not go to that bit just yet?
yeah. But what I'd say, so the last 3 seasons are some of my favorite. They get a lot more comic booky, a lot more. There's this. I mean, they have so many superheroes turn up. They have so many team ups. They have like there was like the feature length episode and double episode kind of thing, and yeah, there was all that kind of stuff going on then as well. So yeah, I think there was a lot of fun to be had in that last. There is a period in the middle. Season 7 is really tough to watch, but because there's some not very good episodes in there, some pretty terrible ones, um, and you can feel everyone sort of running out of gas because that's when the original creators leave as well in season 7. but then
Right.
8, 9, and 10, there's a little bit more vibrancy, I think, going forwards. But yeah,
So,
I think
so, so
go on.
now I was just going to say, because I remember buying them as soon as they came out. I'd pay full price for them. I'd get the disc straight away, watch it, and then Paul, my friend, would be like, have you watched it? And I'd have to bring the discs to work, and he would, I'd be like, oh, I need the next one. I'd be like, dude, I'm busy this weekend. He'd be like, oh, let me have it. So we were like so into it. And then I just remember, yeah, season sort of 7 or 8, it was like it didn't come out on DVD, or like I just found it hard to get. And then I think that's what stopped me sort of watching around that bit. But then I remember it was like all season 10, and I sort of just I must have just somehow skim watched or something, because I do remember the team up stuff, and Green
Mm,
Arrow, and all the the Metropolis stuff, and
mm,
obviously everything else that happens at the
yeah.
end of 10. Um, but I've rewatched sort of seasons 1 to 5 a few times,
Mm,
and love it. So I think obviously my heart is more leaning towards that very early
mm,
part. But I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying I've watched it more.
yeah. No,
Um,
definitely, and and there is it's some of my favorite stuff is at the beginning as well. It's just I just think for me the lesson for me is they the time you got to spend with these characters is what makes it better. And I think it's obviously we've got a new Superman film coming soon. There's going to be a new Superman. There'll be a new Martha. There'll be a new you know there'll be a
mm,
new Lois. There'll be a new everything. And I'm now thinking in my head like, maybe they need to spend more time with these characters, or to really get that feeling, or they need to write nearly a perfect film to be able to do that. Um, but yeah, I just think there's a lot of highlights. Obviously, there are some lowlights. um, I think just off the top of my head, which is fun to think about. There's some bad, live action versions of characters in the show. One, unfortunately, is Doomsday. Um, we got him, and it was really fun. Like it was a kind of good storyline for that character to be in Smallville, but then obviously the final fight between Clark and Doomsday was very disappointing. Super super disappointing. Um, and then also, what else we had? I think they lost their way with Supergirl. I think they actually cast a really good Supergirl, and she was really good, but they clearly just didn't know what to do with her. So she
mm,
just went missing, and she's on the front of the DVD, so you would expect her to really be like the focal point of what's going on, but they kind of just didn't know what to do. So in the end, I think she ends up like losing her memory, and like it's not good. It's not good.
please,
Um,
please don't say Flash, because I used to really like that little Flash kid
no,
in
I
the
you
early.
know I think him. I think the guys they got for the different Justice League characters like Aquaman, Cyborg, Green Arrow, Flash. I thought they were good. I think that the low light for that is that they just didn't commit to doing more of that. Now that may have been because there were weird constraints on certain characters, like Lois, for example. She was only allowed in a certain number of episodes, like maybe 13 episodes per season for like 3 or 4 seasons. They wouldn't
Mm,
allow her to be in any more, um, for whatever reason, because it was like, well, people will get confused if if there's another Lois, and we have a film and blah 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 blah. So it was always a bit that was a bit silly. Um,
yeah,
so you had stuff like that, and I think maybe some of this was probably due to that they couldn't use these characters too much. um, I feel like if it was made now, they'd probably have access to a lot of these characters because they realize like people can watch a TV show and realize that it's not a movie, you know, and they won't get
yeah,
confused. It's okay. um, and I think they needed more. We needed more Flash, and we needed more Aquaman, and we needed more Cyborg, and we needed more of those team ups and stuff. So it was. I think this, if we say low line, not necessarily the characters, but just the fact that they didn't capitalize on the
Mm,
stuff that they did that was good. For
yeah.
whatever reason, they couldn't capitalize on it. Um, but yeah,
I'm trying to think of things that like I personally like loved. And obviously, you brought up Lionel Luther
mm,
um, earlier. I think the way he was with Lex, um, and like when he becomes blind and he's not really blind, or he gets healed. I always loved that little turn there when
mm,
it's revealed that he's not actually blind.
yeah,
Um, Lex again, just towing that line of you know, ju- uh, just being the bad guy, I guess, isn't it? But
mm,
he toes it so well, and it's like, can you really trust him? He just does these things, and it's like, why were you on the phone to that reporter, Clark? I promise I was actually trying to do this for you, and it's like, well, was he or wasn't he? And
mm,
like he's obsessed with that car crash. I love that in episode one when he crashes into Clark and
yeah,
it drives him mental that he has to have specialists go over the car and you know they've got like a computer image of Clark being hit and all of that. I love that. Do you know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
Lex can't let it go. He knows something's up. Clark's never going to give up the reason because he's protected himself and everyone he loves.
mm,
So those sort of dynamics that carry on work so well, and it just creates that tension over time. And I think that is what keeps me coming back. You
yeah,
know, I think like the silly stuff is for me, and it is probably more season one where everything has got to do with the meteor shower. Everyone's been infected,
mm.
and you know what I mean. It's like it gets a bit samey.
Definitely. I think they refer to it as Freak of the Week. And
That's quite funny.
yeah, but on that Talkville, they had the creators of the show, and it was like, they had to. Basically, the point was that anyone could tune in at any point and not be lost, kind of.
Mm,
So it was more like that's why stuff was like wrapped up by the end of the episode, and this is why it was this. So a lot of it had to do with that. But as we went on, that became less like you got less of that. But season
yeah.
one is yeah. There's like every week there's like a bee person and the bug person and the electric person and the cold person and the heat person and the this and that and the other. Like it's nearly every single week. So
Mm.
you get less of that as you go along, and they try and tell different stories and stuff. But um, yeah, like
Oh,
it's. I think for them it was like just a reality of it at the time.
yeah. I can think of two moments that me and you personally loved at the time. The first one was the red kryptonite.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
it the end of season 3 or 2?
When
Um,
he goes off, yeah,
and he
he's
go,
had red kryptonite earlier in season two because there's
yeah,
there's an episode I think called Red, and then he puts it back. He puts it on at the end of the season because he wants to like
yeah.
leave because stuff's going wrong and yeah,
And we used to play that. I think it was Oasis
mm,
Supersonic when he puts it on. Then it's just like I'm ignoring the good,
yeah,
and I'm gonna. He goes off clubbing, doesn't he? And he becomes a bit of a nuisance for a bit. And I remember
yeah,
we used to love that when he put that ring on, and you could see the red going through his veins.
yeah.
And then the other one I was thinking about that we loved was when Zod is in Lex's body and they have that fight and the special effects there, like when they're being launched into trees and stuff, or
I think it still looks
that.
pretty. I think it still looks pretty good.
Yeah, it looks
Um,
really good. I remember I think I watched that with you together. That it was
mm.
maybe season 4 or 5.
Start of
But,
five, I think.
but yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's
and
not
it's like
start of five. Sorry, it's the
four
start of
maybe.
six. Might be the start of
Oh, okay,
six. Might be the start of
wow.
six. Yeah.
And
Yeah, that
I
makes
remember
sense.
you because I remember that was the first time I'd sort of seen a little bit ahead of you, and you were like, "No, I'm not having that." And we watched it together,
Yeah.
and it was just incredible, wasn't it?
Mm. That is
That
a good.
whole
That's a
fight
good one.
scene.
That is a good one. Um, yeah, he
So,
just. I think Tom Welling. There's a. I think with Clark Kent, especially later on, but also during the thing, there's like a. He's just trying to save. He just wants to save people. There's an
mm,
earnestness about it. He just wants to help. He's just. He's always trying to do what's right, and you can see where he gets it from. You can see he's got where his morals come from. You see where that sort of foundation came from. And one of the reasons I didn't enjoy Man of Steel was because this guy was like going, well, should I save people? And Jonathan Kent in this one was like, maybe not. What? Like,
I don't.
and
I don't think
maybe
we're here to talk about Man of Steel.
I know we always have to because this is one of the reasons why I didn't enjoy it because I'd seen the characterizations here that I was like, okay, this feels correct. Then you see that and you're like, oh no, there's something wrong. Um,
This feels like it could be early Christopher Reeve, doesn't it?
yeah,
To a point.
yeah, definitely.
Um,
He's not doing an impression because obviously
no, no,
Tom Welling, I think he maybe have acted like once before this. Um,
he's so good, Tom Welling. He's so good at and he gets things wrong as well, and that's good.
mm,
And one of the problems, we spoke about this before with Superman, is that people don't like him because he's too perfect. He's got too much. Whereas this strips Clark. It's Clark, isn't it? It's not
yeah,
Superman. It's Clark. And I think you were the one that told me. Well, it was you that told me in this show. You'd be lucky if you see him in a red boot, or
mm,
they're never going to show him in the suit. And that was always annoying for me. But actually, that's what was needed, because it's like you are going to focus on him as Clark and Clark only. You've got
mm.
the Superman films if you want to see Superman. Um,
Yeah, and there are people that are still disappointed we didn't get to see him in the suit at the end, and would have loved to have seen Tom Welling in the Superman suit. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely would have loved that. However, I understand why, you know,
yeah,
they now
of course.
they basically, in in the final few seasons, he was in different kinds of outfits and superhero costumes and but again I like the fact that it was like him trying to find his look. He was trying to
Yeah,
find his what he was going to look like. He was still making mistakes. He was just learning. He was do and then he finally at the end gets to it, because he can accept
that's
himself. He can do all this stuff um
uh,
and when he gets given the suit that his mum made him, that his, an apparition or a hologram, not too sure, of his father, gives him the suit, tells him to always hold on to Smallville, and off he goes to save the day as Superman for the first time. We don't get to see it.
you can slow it down, can't you? I
You
think
can see
we've all done
tiny
that.
little, you can see it tiny, tiny, but we
I've
don't
slowed
get
that
to,
down so much and
yeah,
zoomed
but we
in.
don't get to see
It's
it.
just it's a blur, isn't
and
it?
it's sad because I want to see Tom Welling as because I always thought like, well, now he's done, stick him in a film. This is Superman now, but obviously
Yeah,
that just wasn't the case. Um, but yeah, like I get why they didn't. It's probably a few reasons. One, this wasn't Superman's story. This is Clark Kent's story, and at
yeah.
the end he became Superman, and we know that. But
You,
then also, I'm sure Tom Welling's like, man, I'd have to get in really good shape to get in the
yeah.
Superman suit and look really good. Um,
You,
probably.
yeah.
And
You spoke about crying earlier, and I know there was another scene you cried in, and I'm happy for you to talk through that scene, which is the last scene
oh,
um,
just everything.
of
We,
season 10.
we've got the music. We see, another silly thing. Sorry, just before we get to that, Jimmy Olsen in the show ends up not being Jimmy Olsen, Henry James Olsen, and then at the end we see Jimmy Olsen, his younger brother, played by the same played by the same actor, but hey ho. But we see, we see the future. They've jumped ahead a few years, um, and you hear Perry, who we see in the show, who's great as well. Um, the Superman '78 sort of soundtrack is playing. Lois and Clark are together. They're looking. Oh, it's just great. It's great stuff. It actually made me sad because it's like I want to see that show. I want to see
Yeah.
I want to see the new adventures of Lois and Clark again, but with this Lois and Clark. That's what I want to see. And the music's playing, and then it's like there's a bomb uptown, and she's like, and I think Clark's like, tell the because they're trying to get married. They've been trying to get married for ages. It's like you know, tell the priest I'll be late, and the music dun dun dun, dun and it's just like we get the full Superman score. Like it is, the music's going. He breaks onto the roof, and it's da da da, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is gonna happen. And he pulls open shirt. We see the S, and then it goes to the end of the show, and you're like, oh. And I remember when I watched it, I was in tears because we'd finally got to the end. I think it was emotional because obviously this was like my ritual for 11 years um, of
Where
watching
were
this
you?
show.
With
I
you?
was I was
Was you?
watching it at my wife's at the time, so I wasn't at home. She saw me and was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was just like, it was everything. It was like it was the end of an era. It was the end of the show. I was sad that it was going. I was sad that we got these really cool bits at the end, like Lex came back and we saw him in the suit. Kind of nearly saw him in a suit, and it's like, oh, we could have got more of that. And also just happy that I'd been on that ride. It was what a ride, that we'd
I
been on.
remember it was a strange one, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was like what a ride we'd been on, and I've watched it a few times, and yeah, of course I'd want him to be Superman, to see it, but I also kind of understand um, as well why we didn't get to see it,
Mm,
um, and yeah, so it's just the Superman music. You need it, and they got it in the show. You need it in every Superman thing. Is needs the Superman theme. Full
mm.
stop. Um, and I just think because it's just perfect. Um, we did also, obviously, years later, get um, a, I guess, an epilogue of sorts of Smallville. I don't know if you ever saw this, David.
Yeah, it
Um,
was Infinite. No.
yeah, Crisis on Infinite Earths,
Yeah.
and we got a small snippet of Smallville with an older Clark Kent who has given away his powers, and we see Lois as well, and they've got daughters, I believe, and he doesn't have his powers anymore, and that's kind of the end, and that's how we see our Clark has lived his life.
Mm,
And some people, I I think I didn't like it at first because personally I wanted the whole episode to just be them.
mm,
I just wanted them. I didn't want any of these other people in this Crisis on Infinite Earths. But I think on reflection, watched it again, listened to other podcasts. Another really good podcast for listening to Smallville is Always Hold On to Smallville. That's a great
mm.
podcast. If you want to, they're at season 8, so they've gone from 1 to 8. They've loads of trivia. It's really really good podcast. It's by fans, so it's a little bit different to Talkville. And yeah, I've listened to nearly all of it. And you know, the guy that runs it, his sort of thing is quite in character for this version of Clark, who just
Mm.
wanted to, he wanted to be normal. He wanted to fit in. He wanted to have a life and love and a family and stuff. Throughout there was many times where he was like, oh, I wish I was just normal.
Yeah.
And
And
he
he
really
gets
is,
that.
and he gets it. So it's kind of like it's hard to,
And
it's
he
hard
gets
to.
to be like his mum and dad.
Yeah, he's living on the farm. He's working on the farm. He's doing what his dad did, and yeah, like it's like okay, yeah, I can get on board with that. So
Mm,
I changed my mind over time on that one. But yeah, like I mean, I could generally talk about Smallville forever. Um,
mm,
there's so many things. Barely even touched the surface really um,
nah.
about why the theme song for the show,
Remy
incredible,
Zero.
one of the best.
Yeah.
One of the best theme songs for a show. Um, perfectly, matched up with the show. Um,
I always think about those meteorites hitting while it's playing as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then even like barely spoke about Chloe, or barely spoke about some of the other side characters that came in later on in the show, like Tess Mercer, like Oliver Queen. These other characters that
Mm.
were really really good.
Oliver
Um,
Queen, who's also our favourite in This Is Us.
and This Is Us as well. To say this guy went from a comic book show, less serious, to that, man, like what a guy. So I just think, yeah, I'm always going to rewatch Smallville. Um,
Mm.
it will be on the rotation of the things that I will rewatch until I'm can't see anymore. Um, because I think it's just a great version of Superman.
It's
I
got the
li
great tone about it that just is. It's just perfect, isn't it? It's just
Yeah, the way the farm looks, the way you know, just the family dynamic, the way, all of that stuff. It just looks. Yeah. It's just there's so many. There are obviously it's not perfect. Let me put that out there. It's not
no.
perfect, but there's so many good things about it that is like, well, yeah, like 200 odd episodes, however many in the end it had. Well, yeah, of course there's going to be some duds and silly
Yeah,
ideas
I think
and
you can
stuff.
tell that they were trying as they were going along with it as well.
Yeah, I think so.
They
They
had a
tried
they
stuff.
had a
Some of it worked, some of it
yeah
didn't. You know,
yeah definitely.
and
Um,
yeah, like just so many good things, so many things they absolutely nailed, especially the casting. I think that's like the number one
yeah.
thing. There's no one I was like, ugh, like why is that person playing this? But like, because I go in other shows and you're like, ugh, this person is horrible. Like you don't enjoy this person at all. But that was not the case for any of the main cast of Smallville. Not really at all. You know, um,
Mm,
so you know that was a really good part of it as well. And yeah, just great stuff overall. And as I said, the fact that Lois and Clark are going to end up together doesn't take away from the journey that you go on to see them get together. So it's really fun when they do get together. Um,
mm.
Later on in the show. So yeah, like loads of different bits, but like absolutely love that. And yeah, just watch Smallville. If you've never watched it, absolutely watch it. Um,
Yeah,
um, there's obviously it's a more, especially earlier seasons are more like teeny in tone, just because it was it's aimed at young adults. But I think there's still stuff to get from it, from
mm.
some of the side characters, from Clark, from the interactions with the parents, from all that kind of stuff. And I think there's stuff to get out of this, absolutely. Um,
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Definitely. So, yeah, Smallville. Um, Good stuff.
I could say yeah. It's one of those like oh we're wrapping it up now, but we've probably been going for half an hour. But
Yeah,
yeah, there's so much to say. We could easily do another one and just you could just pick one episode and we could talk about it for ages, couldn't you?
you
It's
could just. I mean, honestly, we could do another half an hour on
I was going to say
Lex Luthor. Let's do another half an hour
yeah.
on just Clark, or just Lionel, or just Jonathan and Martha, or just that one episode, or just that one season. Because I enjoy all parts, the good and the bad. You don't get to,
Yeah.
you have to embrace the bad because there are some
Mm,
really bad episodes of television in this show. Don't get me
mm.
wrong, but you don't get to enjoy the highs if you don't embrace the lows. So,
If you if
um,
you um if you created a Smallville channel, I would subscribe to you. Right?
thank you very much. Um, uh, thank you, because yeah, I enjoy it a lot. So yeah, if you're interested, obviously you as well, David, the two podcasts, Talkville and Always Hold On to Smallville, for all your
I will be
Smallville
looking
small
at this.
for all your Smallville needs.
I will be
Um,
watching straight away.
yeah, but yeah, I think that's it. We'll probably be back next week. I'm not sure what we're gonna review, but yeah, we'll take a look and we'll be back. Anything else you want to say, Dave?
Somebody save me. Now that's it from me.
And on that bombshell, we'll leave. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.
See you later.